subjective response, something that's based on what you think or what you feel. But we like to provide evidence where it's available and objectivity. Share responsibility for including all voices in the discussion. In other words, don't take too long, don't hog the mic. And finally, recognize that we are all still learning, which is very important. No one has all the answers. Collectively, even, we don't have all the answers. But together, we can increase our knowledge by sharing what we do know. And that certainly is our objective here at the Reclamation Project, to provide some understanding, additional knowledge. So, our topic for today is God's diet. Even that has science to it. I don't know how many of you ever considered whether or not there could be science in the diet, the meat diet that is, that God prescribed. But there actually is, as you will find. I'm careful to say, or to specify, that what we're discussing today is God's meat diet, which is a secondary diet, because his original diet, as we all know, or perhaps we don't all know, God's original diet did not include meat. It was vegetables. It was actually fruit. It was grain, and it was nuts. It actually didn't include vegetables from the very beginning. That was animal food. But we had the fruit, the grains, and the nuts. Now later on, we won't go through the whole story, post the flood, post sacrifices beginning, we did begin to eat meat, and then God said, hey, you know what, I got something for you. These are the things that I am admonishing you to eat. Now, to the Jews, it was much stronger. It was, these are the things that you must eat. Now that will actually carry us on another topic if you want to understand why you're stressing that it was the Jews who it was forced on. I actually had some new revelations as of last night. I was up late about 3 studying this subject matter, and I've studied it many times before. But I discovered some things that you all can discover on your own as well. There's nothing special about what I saw. And for those of you who are interested in what E.G. had to say, she had some very actually surprising things. We'll get to more of that a little bit later, but I'm going to open up the floor to some questions now. So this is our topic, the meat diet, God's meat diet, and even it has science to it. I'll start by asking, has anyone ever given thought to the fact that there could be something to Leviticus 11, God's meat diet? Anybody ever give thought to that there could be some method to the madness? Does everyone know what God's meat diet is? Can someone share with me what they know about God's meat diet? Let me prepare another mic to be passed. Well, now I still gotta think of some ways I can crack everybody out of their shells, because what I don't want is just to be a soliloquy, a monologue up here. So, who knows what Leviticus 11 says? What does God say about this meat diet? Anyone? Did I mention in the beginning that there are no wrong answers per se? Or in other words, this is that place where you can say what you authentically feel, and there'll be no judgment here. And so in a sense, there are no wrong answers, but we're just here to share what we know. Will anyone dare to share? You guys just gonna force me into the presentation early?
There's a lot of things.
Come on, start us out with something, Alden. Why did God take the time to say, you know what, eat this, eat that, but not that. Okay, then of those, don't eat that, don't eat that. Was he just randomly guessing?
No.
So what say you? What do you say then? Come on, there's our first contestant. Mary shake.
Well, you did talk about the flood, and I'm thinking that after the earth had been flooded for so long, probably wasn't much vegetation out there for them to be able to eat. And we already know how long a human can go without eating, how long a human can go without drinking water. So I'm thinking that that time was coming pretty fast. And so, I'm just thinking from a practical sense. I'm not thinking of, maybe this is what God was thinking about or anything like that. But I'm just saying that, there had to be something made available for us to be able to consume so that we could live. I'm pretty sure God, in His infinite wisdom, could have done something very God-like to be able to sustain us. But, sometimes God likes to work with us within our, human form and everything like that, our limits, and be able to show us our dependence upon Him. So.
Okay, I like that. I'll just throw in a little bit more information. God actually had Noah and his helpers, whoever he had helping him load up the ark. He had them loaded up with food, actually, that would last beyond the receding of the water. So they had food actually to last, and they didn't have, and I'm talking about vegetation and fruit, they didn't actually have to resort to any meat because new vegetation had not yet grown on the but what you have said is still absolutely true. Anybody else? Anybody else? I'll throw this out while someone waits to throw their hand up, that this concept of, maybe jumping the gun. Let me stop before I get to that. So, is there any method to it? Why did God have select animals? Did He like those animals over the others that He said not to eat? Were they, okay, I just heard a term, that He just introduced a new concept to the discussion. They were clean. He called them clean. Were they clean before He called them that? Or did they become clean after He called them that? At what point did they become clean, and what is clean anyways?
Oh, thank you. I'm guessing they weren't clean. Because after sin took place, then the whole perfect society broke down. So lions were no longer eating grass, they were eating meat. So then shellfish or pigs, they would no longer eat what they used to eat. Their distinction changed to fit what the need of because of sin.
I like that. So now we are introducing definitions for what clean and unclean are, and we have somewhat of a start point for this. So after sin is introduced to the world and the animal kingdom, including mankind, no longer are limited, or they're not just eating their original diet, but they're eating other stuff, including lions are now eating flesh instead of just vegetation. Did you guys know, by the way, that there's this very popular story of a lion? It was in the 50s that ate no meat. It was a vegetarian lion. Anybody ever hear the story of the vegetarian lion?
Not at all.
Did you ever think that such a thing could exist in modern times?
No.
It has happened more than once. If you Google it, Google the vegetarian lion, a lioness to be specific, who lived with a family, and she refused to eat meat. They would throw her a steak, and she would turn her nose up to it. She would turn her head over here to the grass and go to eat some grass. They even tried as when she was growing up as a cub, because she began her vegetarian lifestyle early on. If you can imagine that, calling the lion a vegetarian. They tried to put meat and blood. For some reason, they were mixing it in the milk in order to provide her with some nutrients that they felt that she should have. If she could smell the blood, she wouldn't drink the milk. They'd have to get her a new bottle. She would not drink it. So I thought that was just a fascinating story. You ought to read that even in modern times, that you can have animals that we believe to only be meat eaters, they can actually be vegetarian. If they can do it, surely we could. And I'm not saying anything, but surely we could. Yes, we got a question back there.
I think one of the things I didn't know was that, as far as vegetables are concerned, that it says that after Adam and Eve sinned, then God added the herb of the field, quote unquote, vegetables to their diet. I didn't realize that the vegetables came after the fall.
After fall.
And then after the flood was when the first recorded instance of man starting to eat meat.
Perhaps explicitly, but implicitly we know that the antediluvians meaning the people who lived before the flood, that they did eat meat. But it did become a lot more explicit in the Bible as it was written, as to what the diet was of the people. And this idea of clean that Paul introduced versus unclean was introduced also before Leviticus 11. Do most of us know that? So at the time that you want to explain it?
Well,
When did we first hear unclean and clean as a concept?
well, I think my comment was kind of going in a different direction.
Okay, so
And I did want to piggyback on both Paul and Lloyd's comment. When we really look at this diet and this terminology of clean versus unclean, is really quite reflective of the degradation of man because of the fall, right? So everything points back to the decision that both Adam and Eve made. And so everything went outside of its own personal distinction. Man himself was no longer holy and no longer held that distinction. And so therefore, everything that we experience in that aftermath are the ravages of sin. So all other plant life, animal life, whatsoever, would suffer because of the decision we made. As we know, we've read in Sister White's readings that, Adam himself cried when he saw the first leaf fall to the forest floor, right? Because death had never been seen before. So it's not really so bizarre to see now a lion eating flesh, right? He's acting outside of his norm. We're acting outside of our norm because of the ravages of sin.
I like that. It was right before the flood that in Genesis, I can't remember the chapter, but when God told Noah to start preparing for the animals, some of which he had to assist, or he assisted with, God told him to gather the unclean 2 by 2, but the clean should come in by what? Anybody know? By sevens. So every time we see pictures of Noah's Ark and the flood, we always see animals going in 2 by 2, one male, one female. Genesis 6. Thank you, so you can read there. But in actuality, fellas, God said for the clean animals, they should come in by sevens. So this is where we get the introduction of clean versus unclean, written explicitly in the Bible. Long before we get to Leviticus and the children of Israel. So, what else can we share? Anything else? Does anyone have any insights as to why God called? Why are certain animals clean? So, for example, we have certain fish that that eat other fish, which is quite predatory. And I'm saying this because we were just discussing this concept of, well, look at the lion. The lion once ate vegetation. Now it kills and it eats meat. It's considered unclean. But we have some fish that do the same thing the lion does, just in the ocean, but it's considered clean. So how do you think that God, how did he come up with this system? Any thoughts? Is there any method to the madness?
Yeah.
Share.
When we think of animals that are clean, I guess it's a certain way that they may expose of, or what happens to those foods when they ingest them, and then their whole filtering system of how they filter out what's good, what's bad, what they hold on to. And like, you can't eat a human because we kind of hold on to, bad things. Give me an example. We had an inmate one time who passed by his cell perfectly fine. A few minutes later, he wasn't fine anymore. He had PCP that was in his fatty tissues, and it excreted into his system. And then all of a sudden, it was like he had a hit of PCP. And although he was your size, he was as strong as an ox. And it actually took 8 of us to take him down. And everything like that. He was actually lifting all 8 of us up into the air until we actually had to become more radical in how we apply the restraints and everything like that. So you can't eat humans because we hold on to stuff. But there are animals that when they eat certain things, it goes in and goes out, and their cleaning system is a little better than others.
Man, I gave him superpowers. Took 8 of y'all? For a young little brother like me? Come on. That's some strong stuff. Superhero.
I'm kind of curious about the science too. Not quite sure what that means, but here's something that I heard. I don't know if it's true or not. I'll just give my own story. So, growing up, my family was pretty much traditional vegetarians, semi-vegetarian. Except when we would go to like auntie's house, they had their own farm, cows and chickens and stuff like that. So when we were older, we did eat some of that. And then growing up, my favorite place to go to was like rallies. I don't think they have rallies out here. Rallies?
Your father came to kill him.
They do? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody knows. Somebody knows about rallies.
Those rallies are better than so, I would always get the burgers. I would go to Wendy's, chicken, drink, burger, and all that kind of stuff. But then, I would say like it's been about over a decade. Now, if I was to walk into a Wendy's and I smell that beef or chicken, it just doesn't sit well with me. And I guess it's kind of like somebody who's going through withdrawals, right? Your body has a different reaction. But anyway, so the science. I heard, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you consume, let's just say you're just a heavy meat eater every single day, does it have any bearing on the fact of you understanding something of a spiritual aspect? Scientifically speaking.
Very good question. All right, I'm going to have to leave you in suspense for today and say we're going to have to save that one for a follow-up. But I'm now going to no longer hold you hostage, and I'm going to give you the science, at least in the diet, why it's prescribed, or why it is the way that it is. So, and maybe we can talk about it over lunch. All right. So, I have to say that I'm gonna narrow down Leviticus 11, and that's what we're going to focus on. Deuteronomy 14 lays out the same criteria, in case you notice that there are 2 places where you can find God's meat diet. But I'm gonna narrow our discussion to the land animals minus fowl, the birds. So I'm not going to include the birds, and I'm not going to include animals in the sea just for the sake of time, because they really deserve their own hour by themselves. So I'm going to limit it to land animals. So the first question we have to ask is, how does God say to identify them? And again, can someone actually pull up Leviticus 11? And we'll read 1 through 7. And you can give me a modern translation like NLT, NET. As soon as you find it, just read it. 1 through 7.
Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, give the following instructions to the people of Israel. Of all the land animals, these are the ones that you may use for food. You may eat any animal that has completely split hooves and choose the cud. You may not, however, eat the following animals. They have split hooves, or that chew the cud, but not both. The camel chews the cud, but does not have a split hoof, so it is ceremonially unclean for you. The hyrax chews the cud, but does not have split hooves, so it is unclean. The hare chews the cud, but does not have split hooves, so it is unclean. And the pig has evenly split hooves, but does not chew the cud, so it is unclean.
So we've been given a criteria. What is it? What's the criteria for the land animals that we can eat? Split hoof and chewing the cud. And God calls those things clean. Now, let me introduce this concept here. So when the Bible speaks of clean versus unclean, we have to ensure that when it's speaking, that it's making a reference to either clean and unclean, as in an animal that is unclean because of what it eats and what it takes into its body, versus an animal that is a herbivore that only eats plant life. That's one concept, or one interpretation of clean versus unclean. The other is whether it is ceremonially acceptable or whether it meets regulatory standards for customs. Okay, so just keep that in mind, or both. So, let's deal with the first concept. They must have a divided hoof and chew a cud. So, these are some examples. Cows. So for those of us who are familiar with Leviticus 11, we know the cows or beef that we eat, it qualifies. Not only is it good to eat for those who do eat it, not only is it considered clean amongst man as something that's will be called nutritious or good to eat in modern society, but it is also something that qualifies as what God considered clean to eat. That also includes sheep, goats, and deer. Disqualified animals, which do not have split hoof or chew a cud. These are kind of obvious, but I still need to state the obvious. So cats, dogs, elephants, for example, the list is really long. I know some of us think, how could you eat animals that look like this anyway? But if you go to India, they ask you, how can you eat cows? Because cows are sacred to a great deal of India. Well, if you're Hindu, okay? So, really, what is considered clean and unclean in the eyes of man is relative. But as far as God is concerned, they're disqualified. Now, also disqualified are some animals that God just laid out. Now, why were these singled out? So we have a camel. What can anybody tell me what a camel, does a camel meet one, both, or neither of those points, split hoof or choose a cud? Anybody familiar with the behaviors?
It doesn't have to split up.
Choose a cud, but he doesn't have a split hoof. How about the hyrax or the rock badger?
Choose a cud, doesn't have to split up.
He chooses a cud also. That's the one that's second here. This guy right here. Then we have rabbit.
Same thing. Choose a cud, no split up.
Choose a cud, no split hoof. And then we have pigs, which, what can you do about pigs? Has a split hoof, does not choose a cud. Oop. So here's the science. Go ahead.
Aren't there some exceptions even with the those that are clean in terms of how the animal was slaughtered? There are specifics about that in terms of the way that we're to treat the animal when we slaughter it.
Very
Like
good.
you can't just find say a cow that was mangled by lions and you like, oh, okay, there's some meat, let me go and cook that. No, that's unacceptable.
Excellent. No, you're absolutely right. So, my brother here has introduced a secondary criteria. So God also had that, a secondary criteria in place, meaning that, okay, if it passes the first litmus test, split hoof, and choose the cud, now let's take it through the secondary test. Did you kill it? Was it dead when you got to it? Did a lion kill it? Was it killed by a bear? It's disqualified, if it is. Did you kill it properly? Because you could also kill it and disqualify it. So God did have a secondary and a tertiary litmus test for qualifying. For now, we'll focus on just on whether it meets the first test. But that is something to keep in mind, that it still had to be done right, had to be prepared right. And that introduces a concept that many of us are familiar with today, and that is kosher, the concept of kosher. And we get that from the Jews. They introduced us to that idea. They have a way that they do it, and for it to be considered kosher.
Or halal.
And it has their science, or yes, thank you, say it again.
Halal.
Halal, which is a Muslim standard or concept. All right, so here's the science. So we've been waiting on this. How is it that God decided that He would point out certain animals as clean versus unclean? Everything that God called clean, or everything that He said has a split hoof and chews a cud, is one, a herbivore. Is two, it has what's called a ruminant digestive system. I'll explain a little bit more of that later. And they have 4 stomachs: a cow, a goat, sheep. All of them have this criteria met. They have what's called a ruminant digestive system. In a nutshell, this is what allows them to chew the cud. It starts with them chewing grass. It goes into their first stomach, 1 of 4. The first stomach has bacteria in there that begins to break down the grass. And then the stomach pushes it back up. And they secrete more saliva in there. And that's when you see them chewing. And it looks like it's a never-ending chew, like an everlasting gobstopper. Somebody saw Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory. And then they swallow it again, and then it completes the steps. You had a question, Paul? Or a statement?
Yeah, because halal meats there's a ceremony that goes over how it's not just kosher. There's a mentioning of Allah over the food.
Okay.
So
Okay, that's good to know. So there's a prayer that's attached with it. Okay, gotcha. So, if we look at a cow just real quickly, you can see that it has 4 chambers: rumen, reticulum, omasum, and ovomasum. Those are the names of the 4 stomachs. But every animal that chews a cud and has a split hoof is a herbivore. It has this type of system where they swallow it first, digestion, the stomach sends it back up, and they chew it some more, and then they send it back down again, and there are 4 chambers to the stomach. And up to this point, I've seen no exception, and I anticipate that there will be none, or else otherwise, I guess I'm kind of messed up here. But I think that that's a part of the science that God put into it. If you find an exception, you certainly show it to me. Now, there are actually a couple of animals that seem to be exceptions to the rule, but there are ways to explain them. We'll get to them. If you look at the skeleton of a cow, you can see that this is how his skeletal structure is made up. He has his bone, and when it gets down to the foot appendages, then it splits in 2, and this is where we get the hoofs right here. This is also some skeletons of a few other animals. Second from the right is a cow or an ox. We've got a horse here who has a hoof, but it's a single hoof. And you can see from its skeleton that it doesn't divide there into 2, it's singular. So behind the fur and behind the hoof, this is the bone, the skeleton. There's rhinoceros, which is different, of course, not considered clean, or doesn't qualify. Hippopotamus, elephant. Once again, this is a real skeleton. We've got a cow there. We have a pig here. Human. I forget which animal that is. And once again, there's a horse. Now, of the animals that God said was not okay to eat, they meet this criteria. They're either carnivorous or they're omnivorous. They have what's called a monogastric digestive system, which means they have one stomach, like humans do, like dogs do, like cats do, like pigs do. Or all other animals that are not considered okay to eat, they have what's called a pseudo-ruminant digestive system. And that leads me into those exceptional animals that seem to qualify. They seem like they're exceptions to the rule, but they're really not. They have 3 stomachs, not the 4th. So again, an example of that would be the pig. So, those exceptional ones that I mentioned, the camel and the hyrax. Both of these animals have 3 stomachs. Both of them chew a cud, but they fail on the final qualification. And because, for example, the camel, if you look at his foot, if you don't study it closely, you could mistake it as being a split hoof. But when you carefully examine it, you'll see that there is a difference between a camel's foot and the foot of a cow, for example. A camel has a soft padded paw, versus a cow has, and a horse, they have a very hard shell that the bottom of their foot is enclosed in. The camel has what is more akin to a toenail, a very large toenail. So on the surface, it looks like it has a split hoof, but it really doesn't. Now this is your God, because God was careful to actually single out the camel because he knew that some people would mistake it as having a split hoof like the cow, but it really doesn't. Hyrax, again, would be the same, and the hare. I guess for some reason, I don't know, rabbit may have been popular. That could partly explain why God singled out through Moses that you can't eat the hare. Perhaps it was popular to eat. This is a picture. Let's see if I can actually play this. So this was actually a video of the cow of the camel that I wanted to show. The camel was just chilling at the beginning of the video, and then all of a sudden you see his throat moving. It's the cud coming up. And then next thing you know, the camel was chewing. He just sitting there chilling. So it was just really fascinating to actually watch this process take place. He went from having nothing in his mouth to chewing like he had some bubblicious gum. Some of y'all know about bubblicious. That was a jaw workout back in the day. So the pseudo-ruminant digestive system, and I'm going to be wrapping up. I see my time is coming. The camel, the hyrax, There are some other animals. One in particular is the hippopotamus. Hippopotamus has 3 stomachs, except that I'm not certain whether a hippopotamus chews a cud or not. I'm not sure that he does, but even if he does, he still doesn't qualify because he doesn't have enough stomachs. Well, he does have some molars in the back. He has his fangs, not fangs, what do they call them? His tusks. His tusks, but he does have grinders, molars in the back. Now here are some animals that might surprise you that actually qualify. They chew the cud, and they have a split hoof. First is a bison. How many knew that? How many knew that a bison burger was all right with God to eat? You had it? How'd you like it? It's good? How would you compare the taste if you might be able to?
I mean, for me, I definitely had a gamier taste. It tastes a little different than the cow. I mean, it's cleaner. It felt a little cleaner than most of my beef burgers that I've had.
As gamey as venison?
No, not quite.
Not quite.
Totally different.
Everybody know what venison is, right? I got some young faces. All right, that's deer for the young minds. Now this next one, I think, I'm pretty certain is going to surprise you. I was, a few years ago, I was studying it, not that deeply, and I said, you know what, this animal looks like it qualified. Not that I would ever want it, but I let it go. But after studying it this week in preparation for today, it absolutely qualifies. Any ideas? Anybody have any guesses on what it's going to be? There's an animal that we do not see burgers of it, not in America. I know somebody's eating it, just not in America. Any ideas? You ready for it? Come on, say you're surprised. Come on, everybody ready for some giraffe bacon? I was reading, someone said that giraffe burgers were good. Come on. Would you have ever thought, though, that a giraffe is in there? So if you examine the skeleton of a giraffe, you'll find it's split hoof, there's a split bone, just like a cow. At the bottom, it has a hard hoof. Not a pad, a soft pad like a camel, but it has a split hoof. It has a ruminant digestive system. It has 4 stomachs. As far as God is concerned, if you wanted to eat it, you could. So, let's see. So, what was the science? Let me just recap. The science is that when God started laying out what he wanted the children of Israel to eat, it was not random. It was not, in fact, to the other end of the extreme, it was not random. It was so precise that when you opened them up, you would find that all of those animals had the same digestive system. They were anatomically identical. Now on the outside, they certainly look quite diverse from each other, a giraffe from a cow. But on the inside, the digestive system is arguably the most pronounced identification of who we are on the inside. So when God laid them out, it was not random to the other extreme. It was absolutely precision descriptions. Split hoof, and who would have known? All he had to do was describe it by 2 simple, seemingly simple points. Chew the cud, split hoof, and everything else fell together. Herbivore, ruminant digestive system, 4-chamber stomach. Any questions? I actually was waiting on some rebuttals. My last slides had me prepared for some rebuttals, but I didn't get any. Anybody have any questions? Come on, brother.
might get beat up by all the meat eaters in the room, but this is just food for thought. I was just reading this, and all the time that when I was eating meat, I never thought about this, but there's like this huge pig farm in North Carolina, and it was a documentary that I was watching, and they put hundreds of pigs on this like platform, and what would happen is the platform would split open and drop them into this big oven. Somehow the pigs knew that this was all going to be bad. And, you know, they were squealing and all that kind of stuff, right? So I'm just going to read this. This is really short. It says, the energy required by muscle activity in the living animal is obtained from sugars called glycogen, which is in the muscle. In the healthy and well-rested animal, the glycogen or sugar content of the muscle is high. After the animal has been slaughtered, the glycogen in the muscle is converted to lactic acid, and the muscle and carcass become firm. This lactic acid is necessary to produce meat, which is tasteful. That's why it tastes so good. And tender, of good keeping quality and good color. If the animal is stressed before and during slaughter, the glycogen or sugar is used up, and the lactic acid level that develops in the meat after slaughter is reduced. This will have serious adverse effects on meat quality. So when we're consuming, and I don't know if this animal's been stressed or not when I'm eating it, but you never know what kind of effect it might have on the individual. I don't know in what way, but maybe that's a scientific thing.
That's good stuff. As the band comes forward, got one more remark over here.
I just had one fun fact.